Today's episode is sponsored by the Frick Pittsburgh Museums and Gardens and their new exhibit, Lewis Hine Pictures America. I really loved the beginning of the exhibit. It starts out with these portraits of immigrants who came through Ellis Island, and the way they're framed head-on just feels so intimate. And the exhibit also features steel workers, children in the factories, and people who built the Empire State Building. These photos really show the harsh realities of migration and labor, all while telling the human stories behind this U.S. industrialization. Lewis Hine Pictures America is now on view. Come put a human face to American labor in the 20th century. Get your tickets at thefrickpittsburgh.org.
Today's episode is sponsored by P3R because they are gearing up for the marathon. The Dick's Sporting Goods Pittsburgh Marathon weekend of events all goes down May 2nd and 3rd. There's the big race and also a half you can run or walk it, the 5K, kids events, and more. So whether you're a first-timer hoping to push yourself to new limits or a grizzled ultra-marathoner with tons of experience, there is space for yins. Use code CityCast15 to save 15% off any registration. That's thepittsburghmarathon.com. Use code CityCast15 for 15% off any event. This is CityCast Pittsburgh. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about.
Hey there, this is not Megan. This is executive producer Mallory Falk filling in. Colin, Sophia, what book would you ban purely because you hate it?
I might draw some flack for this one, but I found The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho to be extremely irritating and insipid, and I would happily ban that.
I also hate it.
It's so corny. It's just so corny. It's like, also, it just feels like 250 pages of like, follow your passion. And not my thing, not for me.
I always wondered if like something got lost in translation or something, because I also hated The Alchemist. But I'm going to take this question in a different direction. The Carnegie Library should ban the Dungeon Crawler Carl series because I like it and everyone else does too. I don't like waiting for it to come to me on hold. Ban it for 2 weeks, give me all the copies, and then release it back into the public.
I like a self-serving ban. I kind of went in two directions with this one. So my first choice is Catcher in the Rye, which is already on a lot of banned lists.
Yes.
I don't want to ban it because of like profanity and rebelliousness. But that book made so many middle school boys for generations feel justified in feeling superior to everyone around them. It romanticizes whininess. Like if a 14-year-old boy is really into that book, it is an automatic red flag.
Preach. I think I read that book maybe too late to really appreciate it, because when I read it, I was just like, dude, shut up.
I've also never recovered from our fourth grade teacher reading Where the Red Fern Grows out loud to our class. And so for the lifelong wound that has created, that could go on the ban list too. Plus it like destroyed the life of the one girl in our class who didn't cry at the ending. No one could ever view her the same again.
But to be clear, we are not into censorship here at CityCast Pittsburgh, but we will be talking about book bans more and how that's affecting like some of our local school districts. So this is just for funsies.
Yes, just for funsies. None of us, I think it's safe to say none of us actually support censoring books and literature. I am here with CityCast producer Sophia Lo and CityCast contributor Colin Williams, also a reporter at the Tribune Review, joining us from the newsroom. Welcome both.
Hello.
Hello.
And like I said, I am not our usual host, Megan Harris, but if you can't go a day without her, if you need her in your ears right now, you are in luck because Megan is actually going to be on the latest episode of Your City Could Be Better. That is the brand new podcast from CityCast where our CEO, David Plotz, talks to hosts from all over the country about the things our cities are doing well, the things we could be doing better, what we can learn from each other. So Megan is going to be there talking about Pittsburgh's efforts to try to fill up all of these empty storefronts downtown ahead of the NFL draft through this special rent abatement program. And of course, the question is like, can this lead to real change downtown? Are we going to see lots of businesses getting their start? Or is this kind of just prettying up our city for visitors and then everything's going to go back to the way it was? So if you want to hear more about that and want to hear Megan talk about our city on a national stage, you can subscribe to Your City Could Be Better, and that episode will drop in your feed today. or it's going to drop on the Pittsburgh feed right here on Sunday.
Yeah, it sounds like this is going to be really good for downtown. I've seen news of a couple of new storefronts opening. I know Pittsburgh Candle Company is going to be opening up a storefront, I believe, on Wood Street coming up here soon. So looking forward to seeing some of those spaces activated, especially along Smithfield Street, which the pandemic really walloped.
I'm really excited for Silly Goose just because it's got a cute name, and I think it's trinkets and knickknacks, and I love a trinket and a knickknack.
Oh my goodness, I cannot get enough of tchotchkes, trinkets, and knickknacks. Give me all of the little tiny things to put on shelves.
Can never have enough knickknack shops. So we are going to start today talking about schools, talking about a book ban, which, Colin, you've been kind of covering this ongoing attempted book ban, I guess, for years now. Do you want to bring us up to speed and talk about the latest development?
Yeah, so Pine-Richland School District is a pretty well-off school district that is overwhelmingly white. It's in the North Hills of Pittsburgh. And for the past couple of years, they've basically been having this whole tug of war about various hot-button culture war policies. So when I actually started covering them, this was in 2022, actually, which I was kind of made me feel really old to realize it had been that long. But when I first started looking at it, the 2021 election cycle had seen a basically wave of conservative board members elected to the school board. And this was, of course, also around the same time that school districts were reacting to the murder of George Floyd with statements and policy changes and things of that nature. And so in Pine-Richland, they drafted a policy. They based it on standard language from a statewide organization. Students and parents had been pushing for this, particularly students and parents of color. They said that they had had issues with bullying, with students directing racial slurs at them. There were some houses in the district as well that had been flying Trump flags and Confederate flags and things of that nature. So this all resulted in a proposed policy. This was called Policy 832 that was going to kind of enshrine DEI as a concept in the district. And it followed on the heels of a successful open letter that got about 500 signatories in the district. So there was an anti-racist parent coalition there at the time. They sort of ran into the conservative board members in 2021. One real quote from that time that I thought was great was from a parent. And he said, if you're talking about a scale of 1 to 10, it's the constant 2s, 3s, and 4s that wear you down, in reference to some of the racialized incidents that students were experiencing. So basically these two camps kind of formed. There was Together for Pine-Richland, which is a sort of more liberal camp. And there was Pine-Richland Kids First, which was this more conservative camp. So after the 2021 election, the PR Kids First camp had the majority.
Whenever you hear a name like Kids First, it's like, it sounds nice in theory, and it's usually about actually restricting people's rights and access.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think it begs the question of which kids we're talking about here, right? Because certainly many students who signed on to this open letter were not in favor of a lot of the policies that this group went on to propose and implement. So they essentially stripped down this DEI policy. So I covered that. And then in 2023, working basically hand in glove with Moms for Liberty and some other conservatives.
Moms for Liberty was big for book bans, like, across the country, too.
In revisiting this story, it actually made me think, like, wow, I wonder what happened with them. Because they were everywhere for a couple of years and then kind of faded into the background. I think there were like some corruption scandals there as well or something in Florida. But in any event, the Moms for Liberty policymaking resulted in some pretty material book bans. I actually spoke with an author who had his work removed, and he compared it to being bullied as a young gay man. There was also The Perks of Being a Wallflower was considered for a ban.
Written by a Pittsburgh author.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's own Stephen Chbosky's Perks of Being a Wallflower came under the scrutiny of the conservative board members, as did graphic novel Persepolis and a number of other books that are very well regarded, critically acclaimed books. And many of them, it was simply for addressing topics like child abuse head on. So the 2023 election was another sort of winning year for conservatives. Several of the Democratic members that I interviewed for my first article about this were pushed out. All of this, however, has shifted as of 2025. So in 2025, conservative board members, including Christina Brusalis, who is the wife of Point Park University President Chris Brusalis, was unseated. So there are still a couple conservative members. There's one, Mike Weedhorn, who is actually criticized for not having children in the districts, despite advocating for book ban policies. But the Democrats, or the Together for Pine-Richland camp, now holds a majority. And I think the quote that really encapsulated this for me in a WESA article on it was, "People just want to see it back to boring." So the most recent news here, and why we're even talking about this today, is that the board just voted a couple days ago to suspend the book banning policy that would have given them essentially veto power over what ends up in the library. And the school board is now working on an update. So it's been an interesting saga. There's really been some ups and downs, lots of social media hand-wringing about this. And I think the thing that I want to leave listeners here with is that almost all of this pushing back on these book bans originated with student activism. Students attended board meetings. They were advocating for specific titles that had been banned. They were getting their parents involved. So tip of the hat to the Pine-Richland students for really basically fighting for their right to read.
Totally. This is so cool to see students because, it's their school. They're the ones engaging with this material. I want them to have a say in what's allowed in their school. And I don't know, as a kid, I would have hated it if someone was like, you can't actually read this book.
I mean, it would make me want to read it more, I think, if anything.
Well, and I think that sometimes people say, if parents or, community members are so concerned about their children reading these books, the best way to drum up interest in these books and make more kids want to check them out and look into them is by banning them, by creating a whole conversation about them, putting them on children's profiles. It's banning something makes it inherently more interesting and desirable in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that forbidden fruit effect is definitely there. But yeah, the students, one of the things that the board is also revisiting is the librarian's role in the policy. They've kind of framed this as giving the power back to the librarians and for the students. And I think one of the important things that they noted is that entering a library is voluntary. It's not a required classroom space. Picking up a book is voluntary. So, it's important to frame these things in terms of individual liberties as well as right to read and right to make edgy art or art that addresses hard topics.
Yeah. And one thing I saw that was interesting that they're, a change they're potentially going to implement is I guess up until this point, anyone was eligible to challenge a book. And now they want to limit that to legal guardians of students in the district. So it seems like there's still going to be room for challenging, but board members aren't going to necessarily have the final say. And there are going to be limitations on who's raising issues in the first place.
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of districts struggled with Moms for Liberty was that people were coming in from outside of the district and were basically proclaiming these different books were horrible and they needed to be banned. And actually, in the case of Pine-Richland, they brought in a conservative pastor at one point, and he was talking about how, books like Perks of Being a Wallflower were pornographic. This is somebody who not only has kind of an axe to grind, but isn't really invested in the region in any meaningful way.
Colin, I really appreciate having you here to talk about this because I feel it feels like a couple of years ago, there was so much coverage of book bans and talk about these movements. And I mean, like we've said, Moms for Liberty was everywhere. And so it's, I think, really useful to be able to follow the story and see what schools and boards and communities are deciding to do a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, I think it also unfortunately reveals the way that the culture wars really just are. It's just if it's not one thing, it's another. The way some culture warriors kind of move from one issue to another is very apparent in this story.
Yeah. Well, shifting to Pittsburgh Public Schools, we have been talking so much on the show about kind of this ongoing saga over whether PPS is going to close and consolidate a bunch of schools and make some other big changes to kind of overhaul the district. They had hired outside consultants to come up with a plan. And all of this is really because the district right now, it has the capacity to serve double the number of students that are currently enrolled. There are financial issues. There are also inequities in the district that officials want to address. But right before Thanksgiving, kind of at the 11th hour, it seemed, the board decided to reject this closure plan. There had been a lot of pushback from parents and families, a lot of public comment against the plan. So the news is that now the board has unanimously voted to reopen closure discussions. At the time they voted against the plan, there seemed to be this understanding of we're not going to move on it now, but closures are still on the table. We're going to revisit this. So they have officially decided to revisit this. And the board members have committed to make a decision one way or the other by the end of the school year.
Yeah, I know one of the concerns was that the timeline was too rushed. But I don't know if pushing this decision to the end of this school year really extends the timeline that much. Like, I guess they've been discussing it for a while, but still, like, a few months is not a huge amount of time.
This whole vote just sort of feels like, but we're serious this time. And I'm kind of just waiting for the board to sort of make a decision. I mean, obviously, whatever happens is not going to please every parent. And they're sort of between a rock and a hard place with empty buildings, with rising maintenance costs, declining enrollment, all of this stuff. I mean, it's pretty clear that like something needs to be done. Unfortunately, though, for the parents, I mean, that's necessarily going to remove some of their neighborhood schools or change alignments in ways that they don't like. So it's a tricky situation. It feels like lose-lose for the board.
And Sophia, to your point about the timeline, my understanding, at least, like I'm not entirely clear on the timeline, but I think the idea is that they will make a decision on whether they're going to like move forward with the plan or start from scratch. It's not that they're going to like decide by the end of this school year that like, okay, this fall, 9 schools are going to close. Because I think that was also the concern, was the board was voting in November for a plan that would start getting implemented this fall. And people felt like that was just way too rushed. We did a whole episode. We talked to James Fogarty from A+ Schools about this, someone who himself is in favor of making some kind of big change, recognizes something needs to happen. But he voiced concerns about like, you need to make sure you have all the supports in place for major transitions like this to be successful. And I mean, there are studies about how school closures are usually the most disruptive for the most vulnerable students, can be the most harmful to the most vulnerable students. So there are real questions about how to ensure that if the district goes through with this plan, these kids will have the softest landing possible if their schools close or change dramatically. Like, it's going to be painful no matter what, but how can the district kind of minimize that pain and that disruption?
One of the things that strikes me as being particularly interesting in all of these discussions is the role of magnet schools. They're among the sort of higher performing schools within the PPS system, but a lot of the past proposals have involved potentially closing some of the magnets. Like they've talked about closing down the Montessori magnet in Friendship. There has been talk about potentially closing or turning some of these magnets into just more sort of regular 9 to 12 high schools and things of that nature. So, you know, for parents who have really counted on the role of those magnet schools to kind of boost their kids, I think that's also a really big outstanding question and a particularly thorny issue for them to solve.
Yeah. And I believe the most current iteration is to phase out elementary school magnets, actually except for Montessori, which I think has been a tension point where there are some people arguing, well, Montessori actually does something really different. You're mixing grades. You can't get it anywhere else. And other people saying, this is a whiter school than a lot of other ones in the district. Is this decision about kind of ensuring that certain types of families stay in the district and not upsetting them too much? So the whole Montessori thing is its own can of worms.
Mm-hmm. But the one exception for magnet school seems to be Kappa, like the art school downtown. I know there's been some ideas about changing that too, but the majority of people seem to want to keep it in its like current iteration.
Shout out to Jillian Forstad at WESA, who's been doing really great coverage on this. She wrote the piece about the board saying, like, one way or another, we're going to make some kind of decision before the year is over. And in that story, she talked about like some of the things board members said they just still feel like they really need more details on, including what will happen to the school buildings, to the buildings if the schools get shut down, because PPS is already sitting on several vacant school buildings. And so that, among many other things, board members still, it sounds like, want more clarity on before moving forward with this.
Right. And speaking of those buildings, I also saw Jillian wrote an article about Mayor Corey O'Connor. He's kind of got an eye on some of the vacant school buildings. And he's been having discussions with the district about like what they could possibly do with the buildings. I know like when we've talked to him in the past, especially during the mayoral election, O'Connor talked a lot about providing opportunities for students, utilizing places like also our rec centers. But I'm curious to see how this would work. Like who's going to pay for this? Like PPS doesn't really have money. The city doesn't really have money. Are people going to be like coming into these spaces and offering their services for free? Because he's proposed things that seem really cool, like having trade unions come in and talk to kids, or like the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. But like, again, somebody's got to pay for something.
I mean, the obvious best use for these buildings is to turn them into really expensive condominiums. I think we can all agree on that.
And we've got examples to work with.
Today's show is sponsored by the Pittsburgh Opera and their world premiere of Time to Act. The show is set in a high school in the present-day U.S. as students prepare for a production of Sophocles' Antigone, and a new student, Alona, shows up with a secret that comes out after a safety drill. Time to Act is about shared and private trauma and asks big questions about responsibility while exploring themes of self-forgiveness and acceptance. It's kind of a heavy piece, and so many Pittsburghers have put so much thought into it. The writer and director grew up in the South Hills. A lot of the roles are Pittsburghers or people connected to our region. There are just 5 performances of Time to Act from February 28th through March 8th. Tickets are selling fast. Get your info and buy tickets at pittsburghopera.org/time.
Okay, so Black History Month is closing out, but we thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about ways that you can celebrate Pittsburgh's Black history, learn about Pittsburgh's Black history all year long, because it shouldn't be limited to just one month. And want to give a really big shout out to our newsletter editor, Francesca DeBecco, who put together a great article with tons of recommendations for this. We'll have a link in our show notes, and you can also check it out at our website, pittsburgh.citycast.fm.
Yeah, and there are also some really cool events happening this weekend, too. I think one of them is the premiere of this documentary. It's called WAMO, The Sounds of the Steel City. So that is coming out on February 28th, and the premiere is going to be at the August Wilson Cultural Center. So this is about a radio station that originally started out as WHOD in Homestead back in 1948, and it was a huge voice for Pittsburgh's Black community. It was home to the first female Black DJ in the nation, Mary D. Dudley. We also have a little write-up about her on our website, too. So the station's still around, so you might be familiar with it, but the license was sold in 2009, so it's like technically a different thing now.
Yeah, I think they just use like the same call letters.
Exactly. They still do a lot of like hip-hop and R&B, but yeah, different station. And the cool thing is that this film is directed by T.J. Johnson. He was formerly an on-air personality at WAMO and eventually became the station's production director. So now he's into filmmaking, but I think it's super cool that the person behind this documentary has like a deep tie to the station, and the documentary has like a bunch of exclusive interviews plus a lot of like behind the scenes stories if you're into like little secrets and archival footage, so throwback. And if you go to this premiere this weekend, the event also includes a Q&A and a DJ, so dance party.
Dance party indeed. Listening to WAMO is always a dance party. And I just want to shout them out for being one of the few stations left in the area that isn't playing country or contemporary Christian music. So keep on trucking, WAMO. We love you.
And another cool event is Cultivate Enterprises' new History and Heritage bus tours. So this is technically sold out, but Eventbrite says this is their first tour in their cultural movement series. So you can definitely follow them on social media for more updates. But this first bus tour is going to take you through the Hill District. Stops include the New Pittsburgh Courier, August Wilson's house, and more.
I want to particularly shout out the August Wilson house, which is a really cool space. They've been staging productions there in the summer. They've got a basically recreation of August Wilson's childhood apartment. And also, eagle-eyed observers may be able to find my name on a brick there.
I didn't know you could
full
get bricks
disclosure,
there.
I was my partner and I sponsored a brick when they were renovating the house, and we are fortunate enough to share a patio with names like Mike Tomlin and Samuel L. Jackson. So that's a great landmark. I'll also say the Hill District in general is such a great trip through history.
Totally.
You can find historical plaque where Greenleaf Field, home to the Pittsburgh Crawfords and the Homestead Grays was. It was one of the first ballparks in the country to have nighttime lighting. And actually, it's not marked by a plaque yet, but the Hill District was home to an even earlier ballpark that was the first baseball stadium built by Black entrepreneurs. So lots of really cool stuff there. And, you know, if you want to see some of those locations as they were in their day, of course, the Carnegie Art Museum has the Teenie Harris archives that have tons and tons of photographs of these stadiums, of day-to-day Black life in Pittsburgh, photos of Courier journalists doing their thing when that paper was a giant. So much Black history to appreciate in this city.
Yeah, I will say the August Wilson house isn't like open publicly every single day, so you need to find like an event or schedule a tour to really peek inside. But you can mark your calendar for like this really big block party on May 9th. That's to celebrate his birthday. And, you know, that's the time Pittsburgh's really nice. So a great time to explore the Hill District then, too.
So for fans of Pittsburgh's baseball history specifically, the Hill District isn't the only place where you can kind of walk through our past. Josh Gibson is buried in Allegheny Cemetery. So his grave is there kind of tucked away. You can see the final resting place of one of the greatest baseball players of all time. And the Josh Gibson Society has actually been doing really interesting work on trying to find unmarked graves of Negro League baseball players who were basically forgotten about. And they recently laid a marker that I was able to cover a few years ago for Josh Gibson's wife, who her resting place was discovered in Allegheny Cemetery as well. So
oh, wow.
They're continuing that work. They're trying, the Josh Gibson Foundation is working on QR codes and plaques and things of that nature throughout the country. So a great organization to kind of follow if you're a big fan of that slice of baseball history.
Yeah, and I believe that foundation is run by his great-grandson, who we've had on the show before to talk about Josh Gibson's legacy. So we'll include a link in the show notes. We talked to him right after Gibson was kind of officially recognized as having the best batting average in baseball history, which it took a long time for him to get his due.
And, you know, we have a few more ways to celebrate Black history in Pittsburgh all year long. So we'll have that article in our show notes. And one more plug for checking out our website, pittsburgh.citycast.fm.
Okay, we are back, and it is time for shout outs from our CityCast Pittsburgh neighbors. If you're part of our membership program, you get to tell us about the things you love. Sophia, what shout outs do we have today?
Yes, our first shout out is coming from EB, and he's shouting out Jackie Woe Vintage in Crafton. That's such a cute shop name. He had especially nice things to say about the incredibly curated selection of beautiful 70s era vintage. So sounds really fun. If you're looking for something new for the spring, maybe check that out. And then Jessica B is shouting out the St. Constantine School in Bellevue. She says it's a classical school with Montessori elements, free play, outdoor time, and no elementary school homework. Thank you, EB and Jessica.
Yes, thank you so much. If you want to get to share your favorite spots around town on the podcast and in the newsletter, you should become a CityCast Pittsburgh neighbor. You can do that at membership.citycast.fm. And if you are already a neighbor, please send us your shout outs. There is no limit. We want to hear about the spots that we should be checking out. We also want to welcome our newest neighbor, Jennifer B.
And while we're talking about our amazing neighbors, I just want to say we are also so excited for our first members event of the year. We're going to be hanging out at Fulton Commons. It's a co-working space and like shared commercial kitchen on the north side. And this isn't an old school, so it's like cool. The vibes are very curated. It's not terribly techy and sterile.
A use for a school that is not luxury condos.
Yes. But we'll be getting tours of the space and the kitchen and sampling some food from a few of the businesses that use that shared kitchen space. The event is full, but if you want to get in on stuff like this in the future, become a neighbor. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm. And just like one more massive thank you to all of our neighbors, old and new. You're a huge reason this podcast and newsletter is still here, and your support is making these fun opportunities possible.
Yes. And if you're not able to make it to this member event, we also have something coming up for everybody, neighbors and regular old friends and fans alike. We are celebrating 412 Day, our Pittsburgh Area Code Day, with a special event.
Yes, we are officially making 412 Day a holiday. We're going to throw a big bash for it at Southern Tier on the North Shore. There's going to be lots of fun things going on that day, and we'll be sharing more details as we finalize things. Colin, are you showing up?
I am 50-50. I'm going to be meeting my friend's new cat that weekend. So, if I am not back in time, I will be drinking some 2X IPAs with you all in spirit. But otherwise, I definitely hope to toast in person.
How do you know you have a cat appointment this far in advance?
Well, they're out in Lancaster. We've been waiting to meet this cat for a while. So her name is Pickles, and she's very sweet. I'm very excited to meet Pickles.
Colin, this is crushing the vibe a little to make like a cat sound more exciting than our big shindig.
Sorry, I have to honor what was on my calendar first.
But I believe Southern Tier is dog friendly, so there will be other furry friends there to meet and interact with, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they always have some very cute pups at Southern Tier.
And so in case that this isn't abundantly clear, 412 Day is April 12th, 412. So yeah, we'll have lots more details to share as we get closer to the event. We're going to have lots of fun games and activities that are Pittsburgh themed.
A vendor market.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Again, this is going to be on April 12th at Southern Tier. It'll be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So please come on by. It's going to be so much fun, and you are definitely going to be hearing much more about it in the days and weeks to come. Colin, my personal goal now is to convince you that this is a better use of your time than meeting Pickles the cat. So
I would be advocating for cats at the event if cats wouldn't be scared.
I'll see if I can do both.
Moving on to some Pittsburgh wins, losses, and things to know from the week. We have results from the first special election of the year.
Yes, so this special election was on Tuesday, and it was to replace Representative Dan Miller's seat in the PA House because he stepped down to serve as a judge for the Court of Common Pleas. And this seat represents a bunch of South Hills neighborhoods. The race was between Democrat Jennifer Mazzico and Republican Joseph Leckenby. Mazzico won, got just under 82% of the votes, which isn't terribly surprising because Miller's a Democrat and had served for a few terms. So Mazzico will be holding onto this seat until the end of the year, but she also said she's planning to run for the next 2-year term that starts in 2027. So you can expect to see her name on the ballot in the spring primary.
Yeah, and kind of the analysis I've seen about this race is like you said, Sophia, the result was not super surprising, just kind of based on the demographics of this district. But it was the first special election of the year. There were 2 special elections for the state house in Pennsylvania this week. Democrats won both. And so people were watching just because we do have midterm elections this year. So if people want to start reading the tea leaves and strategizing, like these were the races to look at. But again, this one, like I don't think it was not like really a nail biter of a race.
I mean, that's quite the blowout, but it definitely also speaks to like high voter enthusiasm on the left. I mean, we've seen a lot of these special elections, even in some conservative areas, go to Democrats. So perhaps another kind of case file to add to that.
Right.
Zooming out a little bit to national politics, the State of the Union, of course, was this week. But Summer Lee, our Congresswoman here, was selected to give a response to that on behalf of the Working Families Party. So this was not the official main Democratic Party response. This was the Working Families Party response. But you know, historically, they've chosen people who are seen as rising stars on the left to give this kind of response. Past examples are like Ayanna Pressley and Rashida Tlaib. So Summer Lee, along with several dozen other Democrats, actually skipped the State of the Union address. And instead, they gathered on the Mall and gave their own speeches. Summer Lee herself announced that she would be introducing articles of impeachment against Attorney General Pam Bondi related to everything with the Epstein files. And then she gave this 15-minute rebuttal to the State of the Union that was broadcast on social media. The line that I've seen circulating everywhere that I think really stuck with people was Trump's speech wasn't a list of accomplishments. It was more like an obituary for the country working people built and a celebration for the billionaires who want to strip it for parts.
Yes, I have also seen that circulating around.
I think this is the first time that I've actually heard a politician come out and say that the State of the Union is dire. And that's a quote. So perhaps, I guess, for folks who are maybe experiencing some mounting alarm at what's happening on the national level, this is certainly a very direct way of addressing it compared to what we've heard in past rebuttals.
Totally. And also, you know, Chris DeLuzio, another Western Pennsylvania Democrat who's in Congress, he did show up, but he brought a owner of a local pharmacy as his guest. And, you know, a lot of the guests are there because the politician wants to highlight an issue. So this was DeLuzio kind of signaling, you know, we need lower drug costs.
Yeah. So sort of like 2 different approaches to how you like show your opposition and dissent to what's going on, whether you bring a guest whose presence is sending a message or Lee, like dozens of others, just skipped this altogether. I mean, there was sort of like in general to Democratic Party responses that you saw both in like who did and didn't attend, but then also in like the difference between Summer Lee's Working Party's family response and then the main Democratic response that came from Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger, who's a more moderate voice. And I think like some of the fundamental issues the two were talking about were not that different, but like the language and the messaging certainly is different. And Lee really talked about the fact that what we are seeing is authoritarianism.
Yeah, she did not mince words on that front, which I think some people will welcome in this very divided moment. One thing that Pittsburghers are likely to welcome, this is a local win, zooming back in, is a win for folks who don't want to live directly next to garbage. So
I think all of us.
So City Councilor Barb Warwick has been pushing this for some time. Mm-hmm. So Republic Services already operates a recycling center in Hazelwood, and they had planned to create a waste transfer station there, which would essentially be a sort of midpoint for garbage trucks to transfer their loads for depositing in a landfill. And Warwick, amplifying what local residents had been saying, she called this site a rat buffet and sponsored a bill that would ban waste transfer stations within 500 feet of residential areas, schools, and parks. So City Council passed this bill. In other words, Republic is not going to get their waste transfer station in Hazelwood. So this is a win for residents who had already been experiencing noise and were really leery of the idea of trash and potential pollution, truck exhaust and all of this stuff. So now I guess the issue for the city is to find a new home for this waste transfer station. And I actually spoke to Warwick about this a few days ago. And one of the things that she noted is that there are potential sites in places like McKees Rocks that are already in industrial areas that could potentially be a better fit. And that aren't, of course, so close to residents in these places.
I'm glad she's thinking ahead on that, because I think that's all, like often these things are like wins and losses at the same time, because one community doesn't have to deal with it anymore, but like then what community does it get dumped into instead? And so identifying spots where no residents need to be affected, obviously is the best solution.
I just want to put this out there. My personal thought about this was we've got that massive VA hospital site near Highland Park that is sitting vacant, and that's quite far from people. It's already been used extensively, and it's quite a ways away from residents' houses. So potentially some options there to consider.
Though isn't that where there's the vision for the whole police, EMS, firefighter training center?
Yes, that is the plan for that. And residents in Highland Park have been concerned about that outdoor firing range. So it does seem like at some point there's probably going to be construction of a police training center that incorporates an indoor firing range.
Yeah, so that might prevent it also becoming a waste dumping site. But I guess it remains to be seen what happens with that site.
In sort of a loss in local politics, the county director for human services, it was announced earlier this week that she is going to be departing for New York City to work for Zohran Mamdani's administration. Mamdani chose her in part for her successful work on the 500 and 500 program that saw actually 620 unhoused Pittsburghers placed in permanent shelter. And relatedly, her predecessor in New York, the commissioner for social services, actually resigned earlier this year. And this was in part because she had kind of fallen out of favor within Mamdani's administration, and also because during a very cold winter, there were some 18 cold-related deaths in New York, and that fed mounting concerns about unhoused New Yorkers experiencing deadly weather. I have talked to some people who say that Dalton's approach here was a little heavy-handed, so it'll be interesting to sort of follow along as she grows in this new role in New York City.
Heavy-handed in what way?
Some folks I talked to did not necessarily agree with all of the strategies that went into the 500 and 500 program and the ways that the county had cleared homeless encampments. So perhaps there's some room for debate about that, how that policy was implemented. But certainly it caught the eye of New York City's administration. So maybe they'll have their own similar program.
Which kind of is like the administration that everybody is watching right now to see how they try to tackle some of these issues that are persistent all over the country. So really interesting that somebody local caught their eye in this way.
Yeah, she had been at the Allegheny County Department for 18 years. So it's certainly a departure of a veteran voice. And Sarah Inamorato, Allegheny County executive, did say this is a big loss for us, but it's New York City's gain. So we'll see who replaces her locally.
Definitely something we'll keep an eye on.
Well, we can't really close out the weeks without talking about our showing in the Olympics and just general sports wins and losses for our city.
So we had some Olympic gold from some people with local connections. Ava McNaughton of the North Hills became the first Pittsburgher to win a gold medal in the Winter Olympics ever since they started for the U.S. women's hockey team. So in our double hockey gold, the women really acquitted themselves well on the ice. There are actually 2 players with Pittsburgh roots on the men's hockey team as well.
Oh, really?
That's TJ Miller and Vincent Trocheck both have local roots. And Jasmine Jones from Greensburg won a bronze medal in the 2 women bobsled. So there were some good wins this Olympics cycle for folks with Pittsburgh connections. Unfortunately, the hard-fought men's ice hockey competition has sidelined Sid the Kid Crosby for 4 weeks.
That's only hockey news I saw out of the Olympics.
This comes, unfortunately, of course, as the Penguins are second in the standings, but their place is very tenuous, and it appears that this injury is going to potentially keep him out for most of the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, I saw about 4 weeks.
Yeah, this is tough on a few fronts because you've got on the men's team folks with Pittsburgh ties, but they are not Penguins. They are not going to bring our city glory. And I think the men's U.S. hockey win has become a little bit fraught after, Kash Patel partying in the locker room, all of them attending the State of the Union. So Sid feels like the less problematic fave at this point, and the one who could really bring the Penguins to glory. And he didn't come out of the Olympics all that great.
Yeah, for Pittsburghers who were maybe upset by the U.S. men's hockey team's actions, I guess the sort of brighter side here is that no current Penguins were on that squad.
Yes, Crosby was the captain for Team Canada.
Correct. So another sports loss this week was, of course, the loss of Pirates legend Bill Mazeroski. Older Yinzers will doubtlessly remember that 1960 walk-off homer versus the Yankees that took the Pirates to a series win with a score of 9-10 in Game 7. This is the only time the World Series has been won on a walk-off, and this is only the second game-winning walk-off in World Series history. So Maz was truly a Pirates legend who really kind of set the tone for the success that the team experienced in the 60s and 70s. So look for some tributes when the season starts coming up here. Last but not least, I guess in a sports win for us, Pat McAfee is narrating a new movie that you can now see at the Cayman Science Center called The Football Town. And The Football Town is
it
really
spelled like
about...
that, T-A-H-N?
It's spelled T-O-W-N, but I think we all know how it would be pronounced by most locals. So this movie is, well, for one thing, this is probably the longest that I have ever voluntarily listened to Pat McAfee. Mm-hmm. And for another, if you love Pittsburgh football, the movie makes a very strong case that we are the football town. So I will give respect where it's due for Pat McAfee's evident love for the city and for its sports traditions. And there is some fantastic cinematography that captures local youth teams, that captures the Steelers and the Pitt Panthers. So it's a really kind of heartfelt tribute to local football.
So was this narration, was tan sprinkled throughout, given the fact that McAfee is from the region, from Plum?
So yes, McAfee's accent absolutely comes out, and the NFL film staff who presented on this media premiere earlier this week, which I covered for the Trib, said that anytime you hear a word like Yinzer in there, that was McAfee's deliberate decision-making. The original script was not as heavy on the Pittsburgh News, so you can certainly hear the accent coming through when he says things like black and gold.
Okay, that's really funny. I might not be into football, but maybe I'll just watch for the lulz.
And Colin, I know that you also wanted to share an important PSA with us while we've got you.
Yeah, so since I have joined the Trib, it has come to my attention that Yins really need to put them phones down. There have been cars crashing into buildings every day this week.
Are you auditioning for the next football movie?
I feel like my Yinzer credentials are getting there. But I am so serious, Pittsburgh. Distracted driving has gotten out of hand. Wednesday in Wilkinsburg, a car crashed into a building. Tuesday in Lawrenceville, a car crashed into a pole at a construction site near the 62nd Street Bridge. On Monday, a vehicle crashed into a structure in Brookline, and a different vehicle crashed into the front door of a McDonald's in Mount Oliver.
That's actually kind of impressive because, you got to go through the parking lot. You got to really, I feel try to hit restaurant door.
Yeah, I mean, I guess talk about fast food. And then Sunday before this, there was a vehicle that crashed into a building in Trafford. There were 2 different incidents in the past month or so at Millvale and Baum in Oakland. So I don't know what is going on, Pittsburgh, but we need to stop crashing into buildings. If you are a sicko and you want to see more of these incidents, by the way, there is a subreddit that somebody told me about the other day that is called Yins Hittin' Buildings. So feel free to check that out for photo evidence of some of this absurdity. But I just can't get it out of my head how people are just driving into the doors of businesses. It's nuts.
That's ridiculous. While we're complaining about drivers, there are people in my neighborhood who still have their parking chairs out. Get them off the road. There is no snow on the ground.
Oh, them's fighting words for at least some of your listeners, I'm sure.
And I will fight. I box. Let's go.
I did feel like a lot of anxiety this winter about like making sure that I removed the parking chair before I came off as obnoxious to all of my neighbors. But it's a very fine line because like that snow melted very gradually.
Yeah, we still have a couple piles standing around.
You have a couple piles, but it's nothing like it was when the snow first hit. So put your chair away. But I won't end there. I'll put us in a better mood. And by us, I mean me. Pittsburgh Girl Scout Pim Neal has broken the record for most boxes of cookies sold in a single season. She has sold 120,000 boxes of cookies. That is a crazy big number to me.
Wow.
Just to put it a little bit of context, the previous record for sales in a single season was 44,000 boxes. So like 3 times more.
Wow.
And the PG did a very fun write-up. And no surprise, the most popular cookie she's selling is Thin Mints.
Did she share her secrets?
She went viral on TikTok.
Oh, I'm looking her up right now. And I mean, I think one of her secrets is that she is just so adorable and has excellent glasses.
Way to go, Pim. That is quite the accomplishment.
That is all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. You can support us by becoming a neighbor, and you can do that at membership.citycast.fm. Our music is by Los Mocachetes, Aaron Taylor Waldman, All the Kimonos, Benji Arc de Soleil, and Howard Harper Barnes, with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. Megan Harris is our usual host. Sophia Lo produces the show. Francesca DeBecco writes our newsletter, and I am the team's executive producer, Mallory Falk. We will be back on Monday with more from around the city. Have a great weekend.
My college library had showers in it, and I was always too scared to use them.
What?
It was for the engineering students, I think, who are grinding all night. I don't know. I didn't go to that library that often anyway. Like I said, engineering students, math, I'm running away.